Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill the death knell for clean energy, or just a detour on the road to transition? From diesel price hacks to digital policy shifts, this week served up another full plate of economic headlines. Nigeria's diesel costs are climbing again, up over 25%, or are they? We'll find out. Just as Saudi Arabia sparks fresh bond market action with $533 million in trades. Meanwhile, US lawmakers pass a big, beautiful bill with not so beautiful cuts to clean energy. And the Republic of Guinea's bauxite boom breaks records as Chinese demand soars. Closer to home here, Nigerian banks are back to international Naira card transactions, and GTCO wants a piece of the London Stock Exchange pie. And just ahead of the Lagos Investment Summit, we sit down with the state's Energy Commissioner, Biodun Oguleye, for a deep dive on power and capital and the bold new order shaping electricity in Nigeria's commercial nerve center. Miss the headlines? No stress. I'm Rolake Akinkugbe-Filani, and I've got you covered. Stay tuned. As always, we start with a look at global energy commodities. Brent, week on week, was up. But actually, at the close of trading on Friday, prices that slump a bit as market worries about OPEC supplies increasing in August. OPEC is actually meeting today to determine its August increase strategy around oil output. WTI was also up week on week by 1.75%. Natural gas was down by 8.92%, and gasoline was up by 1.93%. Let's take a look at equities markets from around the world. We start, of course, with the all share index here in Nigeria, which closed the week at 120,989.6 points to close up week on week by 8.3%. Deals up by 17.8%. A volume actually of shares traded 923.86 million shares with a value of 11 billion naira. Significant fall from the previous Friday close of trading, down by 13.93%. And equity capital marketization was 76.3 million, not so bad, creeping up closer to the 80 trillion naira mark. Let's take a look at equities in the African continent. Johannesburg, Accra, Morocco, Kenya, they were all up. Quite a bullish end to the week of trading there on Africa's key markets. JSE was up by 1.38%. Nairobi was up by 5.72%. Safaricom was a huge driver of that boost to the Nairobi Stock Exchange, and Casablanca was up by 9.4%. Let's take a look at Europe. It was a mix of red and greens here in Europe. Sounds like a football team, doesn't it? Eurostock 600 was down by 0.4%. FTSE All-Share Index in London was up by 0.27%. DAX in Germany was down by 0.89%. And IBEX there in Spain almost flattish, up week on week by 0.03%. Let's take a look at my top picks from around the world. Of course, the big piece of news coming out of North America is the US Congress passing Trump's big, beautiful bill. That's alliteration. But the flip side of this is for proponents of clean energy like solar, wind, and hydro, there's been a massive cut to US tax incentives for those sectors. Is this the end of the clean energy revolution? I don't think it is, but this is significant because Trump, of course, has really been coming down hard on the alternative energy ecosystem in America. But beyond this, what does a big, beautiful bill mean for American consumers? Well, we're going to see huge tax cuts and a huge boost in spending. We're looking at an increase in the fiscal deficit in the US by about $3 trillion over the next 10 years. Now, they had a unanimous sweep from the Republicans in the House and the Senate on this big, beautiful bill. It was about 218 for, 214 against. So the Reds did have it. And this has significant consequences for America's fiscal strategy in the coming decade or so, following on from his 2017 first term strategy around boosting spending and whatnot. So, well, the U.S. Congress budget office is really worried about the impact of cuts to things like Medicaid, and is worried that up to 11 million Americans will be adversely affected by this big, beautiful bill. So depending on what side of the pond you really sit, the bill may not be so beautiful to you, but for the Republicans, it clearly is. Let's go to Canada. Canada actually has been accused of capitulating to US demands by stepping back its plans for a 3% digital tax. And this is all in a bid by Canadian Prime Minister Carney to revive trade talks with the US. These two North American allies, they are meant to be allies actually on paper, have been at loggerheads over trade tariffs, tariff tensions. They've been back and forth on this. There have been visits by the Canadian Prime Minister to Trump and vice versa. So this digital service tax retreat is the latest in this journey of talks between both the administration of Canada's Carney and President Donald Trump. And there's a July 21 deadline for the issues to be fully resolved. Now, this tax would have affected companies like Amazon, Meta, and Google. So good news in terms of the cost outlook for these tech giants, clearly, but how this fits in with Canada's trade strategy vis-a-vis the US, time will tell. Good news here locally for Nigerian bank customers, because several banks have returned to allowing international Naira cards to be used on global transactions, whether that's on foreign POSs, ATMs, and online transactions on platforms like Google and Netflix and whatnot. So this is really great, because the original rationale behind stopping this about 3 years ago was really around FX liquidity challenges. And now what we're seeing is that these banks have said, well, you can now use your Naira card to make foreign payments. Of course, it's not going to be a free-for-all. There will be limits. Some banks have given $1,000 quarterly limits. We've heard of some premium customers of some banks being allowed $4,000 quarterly limits. So there's a question on the criteria banks are using to determine the limits across the board. But this is great for international commerce and digital commerce and trade, of course, and for Nigerians who need that Naira card to pay for goods and services on foreign platforms. So we expect many other Nigerian banks to follow suit, and all should basically align in the coming days and weeks. OPEC oil output rises. Of course, OPEC is meeting today, Saturday, to determine its production strategy or its output strategy for the month of August. We're looking at a likely 400,000 barrel plus barrel per day increase in output from OPEC. Saudi has been one of the biggest drivers of that planned increase, and even recent increases. We've seen a bit of a tempering effect on oil markets at the close of trading yesterday. Even though week on week we saw oil prices actually climb, but we might see a slowdown in that climb on the back of the OPEC strategy. Here, OPEC, of course, doing around 27 million barrels per day in output increases, so needs to determine its strategy for the very short term. And of course, if we have that meeting today, you bet that Arise will be reporting on that on Monday morning on Global Business Report or Arise Exchange. Now, Guinea's bauxite exports have reached a record high. We're seeing an increase, a 36% increase year on year in the first quarter, with bauxite exports increasing to 99 million metric tons. The biggest consumer of Guinean bauxite is, of course, China. And so that increase has been primarily driven by the fact that China is also increasing its production of aluminium. And of course, that's a key input mineral for aluminium in China. China is importing around 18.9, or actually producing around 18.9 million metric tons of aluminium annually. That is set to increase. Guinea is actually looking to double that 99 million metric tons a year to almost 200 million metric tons by the end of the year. Now, that would help it retain its dominance bauxite production. Guinea also rich in other types of minerals. The key question on my mind is how all the revenue that will be generated from bauxite exports from Guinea trickle down to the rest of the Guinean economy. That's the big question, and that's it for my top picks from around the world. Now for some other top stories from around the world. First of all, Saudi Arabia is seeing fresh debt trading activity after launching over-the-counter settlement for sovereign real bonds in an effort to develop the kingdom's capital markets and draw more foreign investors. About 2 billion reals, that's about over $500 million, was traded over the counter in June, the first full month that the settlement option was available, according to data from exchange operator Saudi Tadawul Group. Now, President Donald Trump stated in a late-night social media post during the week that the federal government should consider reducing subsidies for Elon Musk's business, which put pressure on Tesla's stock earlier on in the week. In a Truth Social post, Trump said Elon might receive far more subsidies than any other person in history, and he would most likely have to shut down his business and return to South Africa without them. Quote ends. Our nation, Trump continues, would save a fortune if there were no more rocket launches, satellites, or electric car production. Maybe we ought to have DOGE, that's the Department for Government Efficiency, look at this closely. And he ends with a quote in all caps, huge money saved. It's really interesting how far that Trump-Musk relationship has fallen. Now, to other news, pressure is piling on London Stock Exchange with reports that British pharma giant AstraZeneca may move its listing to the US, delivering yet another blow this week. CEO Pascal Soriot is considering moving the company's stock listing from London to the US. That's according to British newspaper The Times, which reported this on Tuesday afternoon, citing anonymous sources. The company's exit from the UK market would, of course, spark a major index reweighting, given AstraZeneca is the most valuable business listed on London's FTSE 100. The World Health Organization, WHO, has launched a new global initiative urging countries to increase real prices on tobacco, alcohol, and sugary drinks by at least 50% through targeted health taxes by the year 2035. The initiative, known as 3 by 35, comes as global health systems face mounting pressure from the rising burden of non-communicable diseases, diminishing development aid, and increasing public debt. The World Health Organization says health taxes on these harmful products could play a crucial role in reversing these trends. Global credit ratings agency Moody's has downgraded the long-term issuer and senior unsecured ratings of the African Export-Import Bank, Afreximbank, from Baa1 to Baa2, while revising the outlook from negative to stable. The downgrade reflects growing concerns over the bank's asset quality, capital exposure to distressed sovereigns, and a narrowing range of funding sources. Moody's also lowered Afreximbank's senior unsecured medium-term note program rating to Baa2 from Baa1 and its long-term bank deposit rating to Baa2 from Baa1. The bank's short-term deposit rating was affirmed at P2. The U.S. says the 17th U.S.-Africa Business Summit yielded more than $2.5 billion in new deals and commitments between the U.S. and African partners. The Department of State said the summit, which was held from June 22 to 25, attracted more than 2,000 U.S. and African public and private sector leaders. The department said the summit was hosted by the Corporate Council on Africa and the President of Angola, noting this year's summit marked a record turnout, including 12 African heads of states. African startups secured $365 million in funding in June 2025, making it the continent's strongest month this year and the best single-month performance in nearly a year, according to data from Africa, the Big Deal. This impressive June showing pushed total funding for the first half of the year to $1.35 billion, representing a 78% surge compared to the $800 million raised in the same period in 2024. Now in Nigeria, prices of cowpeas and beans have dropped significantly in 2025, with a 100 kg bag now selling for between 80,000 naira and 120,000 naira, down from a peak of 240,000 naira in 2024. The president of the Cowpea and Beans Farmers, Processors and Marketers Association of Nigeria, Mr. Kabir Shuaibu, disclosed this in an interview. He attributed the price crash to improved harvest and favorable cultivation conditions. Finally, on Nigeria, the average retail price of AGO, automotive gas oil or diesel, paid by consumers rose by 25.2% year-on-year, climbing from 1,403.96 naira per litre in May 2024 to 1,758.25 naira per litre in May 2025. That's according to the latest data released by the NBS titled Automotive Gas Oil Price Watch for May 2025. On a month-on-month basis, an increase of 2.08% was recorded in April 2025 compared to the average of 1,758.26 naira in May 2025. So prices actually rose from 1,722 naira to by about 2% from May 2024 to May 2025. So